Good evening, Africa. Good evening, African Confessions. I am back with another episode. There is a message that I want to share with you guys. The message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi. Can you please post for me as hidden identity? So I grew up with my grandmother and she is the father to my mother. I grew up as the most mischievous child in the village. Now, when I remember all the mistakes that I did as a child, even I can't believe how naughty I was. When I think of my mistakes, it was as if I was under the possession of an evil demon. So the year that I was supposed to be doing my matric, one night, as usual, I had fallen asleep and I had a dream. In this dream that I was having, I saw my grandmother, the one that I was staying with at that time. She was standing right there in front of me. She was speaking with me. Then I noticed something. My grandmother was holding a reed basket in her hands. And it was not a common reed basket. No, it was not that common winnowing basket that is used in the villages to remove chaff from the grain. There was something about this winnowing basket that my grandmother was holding. To make matters worse, my grandmother gave me a sign that I was supposed to enter inside that reed basket that she was holding. But I refused. I didn't want to enter into that winnowing basket because in our culture, witches are the ones that use this type of a basket as a means of transportation when they want to go from one place to another, when they want to do their evil stuff. So I started fighting with my grandmother because she was giving me an instruction. The instruction that she was giving me, it was quite clear. She wanted me to get inside that winnowing basket, but because I knew the consequences of me getting inside that reed basket, if I had entered into that winnowing basket, I would have been initiated into witchcraft, and I didn't want to be initiated into witchcraft because in our culture, the kind of a winnowing basket that my grandmother was holding, like I said, my brother, that winnowing basket is used by witches as a means of transportation when these witches are going from one place to another when they want to do their evil stuff. So I had this dream at around 2 or 4 a.m. I don't know the time exactly because you know how life is like in the village back in the day, and in our house we didn't have a watch to check the time. So in my dream I was fighting with my grandmother, but I was kneeling down right next to the door and I didn't want to become a witch like my grandmother, so I kept on praying and fighting her in my dream. When I woke up, I was shocked because I saw that I was kneeling right next to the door. Everything that had been happening in my dreams was now happening in reality. Me and my grandmother, we had a very big fight and I had great victory over her. But after the victory, I woke up. As soon as I had woken up, something that was spiritual in nature told me to open the door. I opened the door that led to the dining room and I saw that my grandmother, she was standing there and she was looking into the direction where my room that I used to sleep in was. And my grandmother, she was wearing the same exact clothes that she had been wearing when I had seen her in my dreams. And my grandmother, she was holding that winnowing basket. It was so early in the morning, but my grandmother, she was standing right there in the middle of the dining room as she was working whilst everyone was fast asleep. My grandmother kept on working. She was busy removing the chaff from the grains of maize that was inside the winnowing basket. She kept on looking at me as she was working with her reed basket. This thing happened so many years ago, but even today, I can't get that picture out of my mind. In my dreams and in reality, I saw that my grandmother, she was wearing a golden top and a blue skirt. So this fight that I had with my grandmother, grandmother happened on a Thursday. Then Friday, after I had came back home from school, I was so hungry. So I went into the kitchen, and I knew that in our kitchen, grandma always kept dried meat. So I went in there and I took one piece of dried meat. Then off I went into my room so that I can study. I don't know who told my grandmother and how she knew that I had just taken a dried meat from the kitchen. So she came to my room. Grandmother was so angry. She angrily called me. Before I could answer her, my grandmother started beating me up and she accused me of stealing her meat. But I knew that this was not about the meat that I was eating, but this must have been about the dream and the prayer that had defeated her that other night. As my grandmother was busy beating me up, I got a chance to escape and I ran away. This happened when it was in 2013. Up to now, my grandmother told all of her relatives that I stole her dried meat and I beat her up, but it was all a lie. When my grandmother saw that she could not initiate me into witchcraft, she hated me so much. The reason why she lied to all of her relatives that I had beaten her up, it is because in our culture, it is a taboo for me to beat up someone like my grandmother because she is the one who gave birth to my father. So beating up an elderly person like my grandmother, it is a taboo and it is an unforgivable sin. But as a child, I kept on loving my grandmother. I didn't know how deep her hatred was towards me. One day, I was busy studying and revising some past matric exam papers. Then my grandmother came to me and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I am busy studying, grandmother." And she said to me, "We shall see if you are going to write your matric exam. But let me promise you this, if you manage to go and write any of your exams, not even to pass, but if you just write this simple exam, I promise you that I will give you a cow and you can do whatever you want with that cow that I am going to give you if you can just enter into that examination room, because I know that you are not going to write your matric exam." The way that my grandmother spoke to me, it was like a joke, but it was an evil prophecy that she was giving me, and this evil prophecy came true because even though I was playing around with boys, but out of nowhere, just before I could sit for my exams, I fell pregnant and I couldn't write my final matric exam, just like my grandmother had given me that evil prophecy. Now, counting the years, it has been 13 good years since I last saw my grandmother, not because I don't want to see her, but because of poverty. I can't even afford to go back to the village so that I can see my grandmother. Right now, I am living in a foreign country, but I have a heavy burden on my heart. When you see me walking around, I look okay, but deep down, I am a broken woman. Deep down in me, I have a heavy burden that I am carrying in my heart. The reason why I am so depressed is because when I get a new job, what usually happens is that I can work for a few days, then I start to get those spiritual attacks. I just feel something that will be heavy under my neck, and when I get that spiritual attack, it will be a sign of the end. Soon I'll get fired from my job for no particular reason. Sometimes when the spiritual attack happens, I feel like I have a needle inside my chest. I will then feel like someone is stabbing me with a needle. So my grandmother is now old and she told me to come back to the village. She said, "My daughter, you have to come back to the village before I die." She said that she wanted to remove all of the evil spells that she has cast upon my life. Yes, she confessed to me. But with the way that I am struggling, I can't even afford a bus ticket so that I can travel back home. When I look at my life, spiritually, all of the doors are locked. I can't even succeed in my life. My biggest fear is that if my grandmother dies today before I get the chance to travel back to my village, what will become of me? I once had a dream, and in that dream, I was busy fighting with my grandmother. And then, as we were fighting, I hit her on the mouth. And when I woke up, I had a sharp pain on my gums, as if someone had been hitting me hard on my mouth. My brother, I am so confused about my situation. I don't know what to do anymore. Dear listeners, right there was a message that I received from Anonymous. Then I asked one of our admins to give us a translation, hoping that you were able to understand. Let us meet again in the following episode.